Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us R.T. Custer, who's the founder of Vortic Watch Company. R.T., welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk about you and your company and watches, and I know you make some really unique collections, so I'm excited to learn all about what you do. But get us started with a little bit of your background and your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so grew up on a Christmas tree farm in Pennsylvania, about an hour outside of Philadelphia. And that was my great-grandfather started the farm back in 1941. And that was always, I usually call it my family's side hustle. Not a whole lot of money in Christmas trees, but it was a small business. It was, 41 acres of just absolute pristine green. And that was my childhood growing up, learning how to sell Christmas trees on the farm, trimming the trees, mowing the grass, just helping out. I was an only child, so it was destined that I would own the farm someday, and my parents and my grandparents really tried to just give me everything to do and teach me all of the things.
Sounds like a Hallmark movie so far.
So far, so good, right? And somehow ended up going to Penn State for studying engineering. And that was probably due to just my love of Legos and how things work and building things when I was a child. I think my parents were both in advertising and marketing, but they saw how much I liked building stuff. And so they, said, hey, maybe architecture, maybe engineering. Ended up going to Penn State for industrial engineering was my degree. While I was in school, I still helped on the farm a little bit, came home a couple winters and summers to help out. But my first 2 years in school, I worked for a company called College Works Painting, and I ran my own division of a painting company. And it's a multi-level marketing company focused on college students. But I ended up just loving it. And even though I was an engineer and kind of outside of their normal spec, they mostly hire and train business majors for that kind of thing. I ended up being really good at selling paint jobs, and that kind of got me into entrepreneurship. I mean, I'd always been around entrepreneurs, obviously with the family farm, but that was a small business. It wasn't just me. There was a lot of fairly plug and play after that many years. So this was my first chance of running a business by myself, and I excelled at it, and I loved it. And I met my would-be business partner, Tyler Wolf, doing that College Works Painting. And after we ran a painting business for a couple years, he and I worked together on that, became friends, started playing golf. And we had the idea for what we do now, which is Vortic Watch Company on the golf course at Penn State back in 2011. And we basically set out on this mission to make watches in America. That was the goal. And did a bunch of research, realized that old pocket watches made 100 years ago in America are scrapped today for gold and silver. On the inside, if we turn those insides of pocket watches into wristwatches, we would make 100% made in USA watch.
Neat.
So we put that idea on Kickstarter in 2014, and to date, Vortic Watch Company has sold every single watch we've ever made, and we're just having the time of our lives out here in Fort Collins, Colorado.
That is awesome. That's quite the entrepreneurial journey from, Christmas tree farm to engineering student to starting your own watch company. So here's a question. What was it on the golf course that made you think watches as opposed to, I got into engineering, but how did the topic of a watch come up?
Well, Tyler really liked watches, and I didn't. I had like one watch, I think, to that point, something my high school girlfriend bought me. And I didn't know much about them, and I always took my watch off to play golf. I thought it got in the way of my glove, and it was just kind of distracting. And he always wore a watch while playing golf. And I don't know exactly where it came from, but I think I asked him at some point, like, isn't that uncomfortable, to wear a watch when you play golf? And that just started a really good conversation about watches. And he said, in general, it is comfortable, but you have to have a smaller one, and it has to fit tightly, but not too tight. And we actually, the first idea was could we invent a type of watch that would fit better so that you could use it and wear it while you played golf or did other sports, like it was more adjustable than your normal watch band. And that was our first idea for Vortic, and that's where the name originally came from, Vortex and TikTok. It was like turning something to adjust it. And we set down the path of like, could we invent that? And we took it to a bunch of professors at Penn State, and we prototyped it, and we actually won a business plan competition at school about that idea of like an adjustable watch. And then, during the process of trying to patent our original ideas, our advisors and professors basically said like, hey, this is going to cost a fortune, like to prototype, right? You're going to dump hundreds of thousands into just trying to figure out how to make this. And we just started doing some other research to say like, I wonder if we could start with some other product and then come back to this idea we had on the golf course. And that's what took us down the path of like, could we make a watch in America? We stumbled on the old pocket watch concept, realized if we took the pocket watches, turned them into wristwatches, we'd have 100% American-made product, not to mention that's really cool, an antique American pocket watch turned into a wristwatch. It's just a story to tell there. So from a marketing standpoint, we were like, well, let's start with that, and then maybe we'll circle back to that original idea at some point. And like I said, we launched the American Artisan Series, is what we call the pocket watches converted to wristwatches, on Kickstarter in 2014. And we can't make them fast enough. And so we just haven't had the bandwidth to go back to that original idea. And we may or may not at this point. But that's the whole story behind it and how we got into watches. And our first major pivot as a company that happened really before we even launched the company.
That you bring up an interesting word, pivot, because I think the phrase entrepreneurial journey is ripe with pivots. Maybe big ones, little ones, maybe adjustments, but a lot of times they're not 90-degree angle pivots or 180s, going backwards. Sometimes it's just like, oh, well, we noticed the market is needing this, doing that. Let's shift or pivot a little bit. What are some of the pivots that you noticed in addition to what you just mentioned, especially given the, at the time of this recording, we're, kind of on the tail end, hopefully, of the COVID, which I will just say this kind of as a bookend. I feel like a lot of people go, oh, well, as soon as COVID is over, then things will go back to normal. Guess what? We've had economic crashes. We've had 9/11. We've had COVID. We'll have something else coming up. The world is in a constant state of adapting to change. So it doesn't matter. You can insert whatever word, but I think pivot and reacting to what's going on in the economy is always going to be there. What do you guys see, and what have you experienced in that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, struggle with that if this, then that concept, like when I'm a millionaire, I'll be happy. When I sell my first product, I'll be happy. When I finish my website, they will come and buy it. And you and I both know, if you build it, they will definitely not come. You have to market it. You have to talk about it. You have to tell the world that your product exists. Otherwise, they're never going to get there. And so that was really our first major pivot. Is when we first set out to make these watches. We started with pocket watches turned into wristwatches, and we put that idea on Kickstarter, and we had no idea how much it would cost to make. And so we sold our first I think we sold 62 watches on Kickstarter, raised about $41,000.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that math, not a whole lot of money per watch. I mean, we were selling these things for less than $1,000 a piece. And today we sell watches for $2,500 to $10,000 a piece.
Wow.
Because we realized that we were not charging enough. And so that was the first pivot. And it wasn't an immediate thing. Over time, we've slowly increased our price as we've increased the value proposition of what we do. And as we've realized that we are just winning the supply and demand curve. I mean, there's not another not another company that does what we do. It's very difficult to get into watchmaking, period, much less taking 100-year-old pocket watches and turning them into wristwatches.
Yeah.
And
that's
the demand
unique.
for what we do is
that's super unique.
Yeah, so that was I would say one of our first pivots is just really understanding, first of all, launching that minimum viable product, understanding product market fit, understanding who our demographics were, and that our demographic was willing and able to spend a little more to get a little more, and kind of growing into that. But you mentioned the pandemic. When the pandemic started, I would say, 2018 and 2019, we were, I think, 50 to 60% of our revenue was custom made-to-order watches. We had this really cool app on the website called the Watch Builder, and you could upload, we would upload pictures of your grandpa's pocket watch and turn it into a wristwatch for you and design it, which we still do that, but on a very small scale. We would also find pictures, and we would find pocket watches, take pictures of them, upload them, and you could design a made-to-order watch. It would take 6 months to make these things, and you'd have to pay 100% of it up front. When the pandemic hit and people were unsure of what even 6 days from now would look like, it was really hard to sell something and have someone pay $2,000-$3,000 up front for something they wouldn't get for 6 months. Yeah. And so we pivoted to what we do now, which is called Watch of the Day. And it's the same thing. From a production standpoint, we were making about one watch every day on average. So we just said, you know what, let's just sell one watch every day. Yeah. And every day now, Monday through Friday at 12 noon Mountain Time, we release one new one-of-a-kind watch on our website and on Instagram. And when it's sold, it's gone. Wow. We launched that in June of 2020. And we've sold out. Most of them sell in minutes. Some of them sell in hours. And we've I think the longest one that lasted on the website was maybe a month. And so people caught on. People loved it. It was constant content for us to share. And it gave the consumer urgency to say, if I don't buy this and I like it, somebody else will, and then I'll never get it, because every watch that Vortic Watch Company makes is one of a kind. So that was our major pivot that we went into in the pandemic, and honestly, it's why we did so well. 2020 was the best year we ever had.
Well, I love that, because pivoting, I think people feel like, it's change and it's work and and I think that the interesting juxtaposition between what you just described is watch of the day, custom, each day something new, and so custom. Like you said, typically a custom watch is months to make, and now here's a new one every day. To me, that flies in the face of, it's not just some generic watch like, here it is on sale, buy it now before the timer runs out. It's only $49. We're talking high-end, super custom, and unique. I like that concept. So I think that pivot is just amazing. Talk a little bit about your legal battle that, as I was Googling and researching your company, I see right here on Google from days ago, federal appeals court rules in your favor. So give us the synopsis of what that was.
Yeah, long story, but I'll try to make it short. And multiple pivots due to that, actually. So May of 2015, now we launched on Kickstarter in November of 2014. We did not make and ship a watch. Kickstarter is basically pre-orders, right? People are paying for something, and then we're saying we'll make it. We have to figure out how to make this thing, and then we'll launch the company, and then we'll ship it to you. We didn't ship our first watch until, I would say, fall of 2015. It took us almost a year to figure it out. But May of 2015, we put an ad in Watch Time magazine, which is the largest United States-based wristwatch collectors magazine. And we put an ad that was what we do. It was a pocket watch turned into a wristwatch, and it said Vortic at the bottom. It said contact a watchmaker to order your custom pocket watch conversion or something like that. And the watch in the advertisement had Hamilton, the word Hamilton, right on the face of it, because it was an antique Hamilton pocket watch made in Lancaster, Pennsylvania by the Hamilton Watch Company in 1925. Now, today, the Swatch Group, which is the world's largest watch company, owns the brand Hamilton. Okay. They bought it at a bankruptcy in 1969. We didn't know that. We were kids. I feel like I'm still a kid. I learn stuff every day, right? And we were fresh out of college. We didn't know anything about trademarks or trademark law or any of that stuff. And we figured, I think somebody had asked us the question of are you worried about any of that stuff? And we were like, no, we're taking a 100-year-old pocket watch, turning a wristwatch. Patents, even a patent only lasts for 20 years. So it seems like there'd be no issue, right? We got sued by the world's largest watch company before we shipped a single watch.
Wow.
The lawsuit started July of 2015. We started going to court in July of 2017. We finally were able to afford a true fight. And in February of 2020, I sat in front of a federal judge in New York City, put my hand on a Bible, and I told the story of Vortic Watch Company. Everything I've told you so far and much, much more. I was on the stand for almost 2 hours.
Wow.
And I took my watch off, my personal watch, which is a Hamilton pocket watch turned into a wristwatch.
Of course it would be.
About 10% of our business.
Yeah.
And I'm from Pennsylvania, so it's almost like my hometown. I'm fighting for my hometown, right? And I told this judge the story, and she understood. She got it. She knew everything that we were trying to do. And of course, I'm fast forwarding years of back and forth with the Swatch Group, a multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate who, clearly didn't care about me or Tyler or our small business in little Fort Collins, Colorado, right?
They hadn't even shipped a watch yet. They just wanted to squash you.
Yeah. And so we went to court in February of 2020. We found out that we won in September of 2020. We won the first volley. That was district court, still a federal lawsuit, but just at the district level in Manhattan. The Swatch Group almost immediately appealed. And just now in last month, in September of 2021, we won the appeal on all counts, case closed. And knock on wood, we have until, I think, mid-December for them to appeal again to the Supreme Court, which, in my opinion, would be a huge waste of time and resources, especially federal resources. But, here we are. And hopefully, by the end of this year, it'll be all over. We'll have a nice Christmas party, and we'll celebrate the end of what.
And you can go, phew. Yeah, because you're not targeting one certain old brand or another. You're upcycling all kinds of different brands. So it's really the concept of the thing.
It is, and it sounds like you understand, but I had another federal judge, like the person who was overseeing all of the settlement conferences. She told me, sir, you have an interesting case because no one's ever done this before. There's no piece of law that talks about watches. There was cases like Lexmark v. Impressions where, Lexmark printer company sued this small company called Impressions for taking Lexmark printer ink cartridges and refilling them and selling them as authentic Lexmark cartridges, but refurbished. There's also Titleist versus a company that I'm forgetting now, but Titleist sued another company over refurbishing Titleist golf balls.
But you're almost, today, without getting into legalness, in those two cases, you're almost stepping into representing that brand. You guys are taking old antique watches from a variety of brands going, here's this one, here's this one, here's this one.
For sure. Yeah. And that's, I think, something that got lost in translation at certain points is, there was 10 great American watch companies. Those 10 companies made over 100 million pocket watches in the United States between 1850 and 1950. And Hamilton was a small fraction of that. They made a few million high quality, like railroad grade pocket watches. They were the fourth largest. Elgin was the world's largest watch company in Elgin, Illinois, just outside Chicago. They made 50 plus million pocket watches. They were half the industry by themselves. And that's how our business works, right? The majority of what you see on our website is Belgium, Waltham, or Illinois. They were the big three. Hamilton was number 4. We did turn Hamilton pocket watches into wrist watches, and we do now today. Now that we've won, we can do it again, and we do it all the time.
Yep. Well, let's talk a little bit about your special collections. So you've got a military collection. Talk a little bit about how you focus on the military.
Yeah. So the military edition is one of our special editions, and our business is fairly simple. It's really in 3 parts. We have our Watch Today program, where we make one new one-of-a-kind watch every day. Convert Your Watch, where you can send us your family heirloom pocket watch and we turn it into your wristwatch. And finally, we have limited editions like the military edition. Now, the military edition is a pocket watch that was flown on the B bombers in World War II. They were originally made by the Hamilton Watch Company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, for the U.S. Army Air Corps. And this pocket watch was called the Master Navigator's Watch. And every navigator and every bomber had one. So it is a legitimate piece of military history. We turn those into wristwatches. We make 50 of them a year. That's about all we can find and create. And they come out on Veterans Day, and that's the only day you can buy it because they sell out almost instantly.
Wow.
And that's really our pride and joy as a company. It also supports our nonprofit. We partnered with a school in Delaware called the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative. And $500 from the sale of each one of those military watches goes directly to the school. And that school teaches disabled military vets how to become watchmakers. And if you didn't know, there are not many watchmakers in the world, and there are not many watchmakers in America. And watchmakers actually make more than engineers right out of school. And I say that as an engineer.
Yeah. That's really cool. So I love that you take old things, make them unique and new. I love that you have special collections and focus on the military. And I love that you give back. And I see from your website that you give $500 from each sale. Talk a little bit about that. I know in your website says whenever that was put on the website, you've donated over $75,000 to that organization.
Yeah, that's our total to date. Hoping to do even more this year. We've had a lot of generous customers offer to match or double the donation. They've donated extra funds. We helped the school build another building, and they actually named it after me, which is really cool. And it's just a match made in heaven, honestly. Like what we stand for is so similar to what they stand for. I mean, we preserve American history one watch at a time. And how cool is it that, you can come home from defending our country and learn a second or another career as a watchmaker, and then come and work for us like our newest watchmaker, Gordon, did. And now actually preserve these pieces of this one in particular, military history, and give these watches a second shot at life, all American made. It's just really supporting that American dream for all of us, including the people that put their lives on the line so that I can have all this fun being an entrepreneur. I mean, without them, I wouldn't have the freedom to do what I do.
I love it. It's just so spectacular to see all the nuances of what you do. So congratulations for all the wins with each pivot and wins at each battle that comes along, and for also preserving history one watch at a time. I love that. So RT, what's the best way people can reach out and learn more and connect with you?
Yeah, so our website's very simple. It's just Vortic Watches, V as in Victor, ORTIC watches.com. My email address, if you want to connect with me, is very simple as well. It's just RT, like Robert Thomas, at vorticwatches.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn anytime, RT Custer, Custer.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on RT. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate your time. This was fun.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.